Hi, my name is Harriet Lai, and my project is called Behind the Scenes, the debate surrounding the Sino-British Joint Declaration. My research question is, how did the debates that occurred behind the scenes leading up to the Sino-British Joint Declaration in 1984 affect the transfer of Hong Kong from Britain to China? My thesis statement is, the debates over whether the 1842 Treaty of Nanjing, the 1860 Convention of Beijing, and the 1897 Convention for the Extension of Hong Kong treaties between Britain and China were valid played a key role in determining whether Hong Kong should be transferred back to China from Britain. So some background. In the 3rd century BC, this was when Hong Kong first came under the rule of China. Then in 1842, the First Opium War between Great Britain and China ended and the Nanjing Treaty was formed. In that treaty, it stated that China would give Great Britain part of Hong Kong. Then in 1860, the Second Opium War ended, which was when Great Britain acquired the rest of Hong Kong. And finally, in July 1st, 1898, China and Great Britain met in the Second Convention of Peking to discuss that in 99 years, Great Britain would return Hong Kong back to China in the year 1997. So in 1982, negotiations started as the deadline for the handover of Hong Kong was approaching in just 15 years. The first stage of this negotiation was the standoff. There was some uncertainty about the future of Hong Kong, as it was doing well economically and it benefited both Great Britain and China. Therefore, people believed that China would not do anything because it would hurt the economy. However, China announced that they still wanted Hong Kong, letting everyone know that they still wanted its economic gains only for themselves. However, of course, Great Britain was not willing to return Hong Kong, and they were also trying to implement a democratic system into the Hong Kong political system. Therefore, no negotiations or compromises were formed because none of them could agree with each other. This led to the game theory, which states that they essentially played a game of chicken. In this game, there are 4 possible scenarios. There's DC, which is the ideal scenario, and this is where one state has complete control over Hong Kong while the other has none. And then there's the worst case scenario, which is DD, which states that there is a break-off in negotiations that ultimately destroys Hong Kong. Therefore, in March of 1983, Great Britain finally gave in and started negotiating with China. In this case, Britain chickened out, and China won by forcing Great Britain to agree with China. And ultimately, China had complete control over Hong Kong after the handover. This leads to stage 2, drafting of the agreement. In June of 1984, a working group was formed to draft the agreement. There were some key arguments between the UK and China during the writing of the agreement, notably about the current political and economic system in Hong Kong, which China eventually let Hong Kong keep for the next 50 years after 1997. Though Great Britain did not have much power over drafting the declaration, they were successful in preserving most of Hong Kong's rights and freedoms, as well as implementing a Bill of Rights. And on December 1984, the declaration was signed. Ultimately, China won this fight because the agreement excluded any details, leaving most of the detail in the basic law, and Great Britain had little say in the drafting of the basic law, giving China the power to do whatever they wanted. After the Sino-British Joint Declaration was signed, it was met by a lot of fear from the Hong Kongers and their future. This was especially true after the Tiananmen massacre, where many people fled in fear that China might do the same under their rule. And so during the 1980s and early 90s, there was a decline in population growth and a peak of around 55,000 people who left in fear of the China rule. And this is my project, and thank you for listening.